Again to the Gem Talk. Oops. Yeah, welcome to the Gem Talk. Actually, this topic is something that I've been preparing for quite a while already, right? It actually started because I took a online class at Yale, actually, about the science of well-being, right? And so this topic is kind of combining science and scripture together and really understanding what is happiness and where does kind of happiness come from, right? And today we'll be blessed to have guest speaker from the Bekasi Church as well. Hey, the Bekasi branch of our church, Ellis, as well as Justin and Vicky, who are going to be here as well to share. So really grateful for having them here. But yeah, I mean, I think regarding the topic of happiness itself, I've been, a lot of good things have been happening recently, right? Like just yesterday was the second year anniversary of Fen and I's wedding, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys were there as well. And actually, our baby is also coming out in about 2 weeks now, right? And things at work, everything has been going well. So there's just like there's so many things to really be happy about, right? But then along with this talk, right? I was reflecting what kind of is happiness and what makes us happy. That's kind of like the main question I want you guys to think and ponder about for the next few moments. But essentially, if you guys remember the previous two Gem Talks, right? A lot of you guys made resolutions as well, right? A grand majority of you guys, 70% said you guys made resolutions, and most of them about spiritual goals, health, wealth, relationships with others, right? Obviously, some other goals as well. But again, a question I want you guys to think about, right, is do the completion of these goals make us happy? Like, do we get happy if we have good health, if we lose weight, if we have good health and career advancements? Or are we happy regardless of these goals? Like these goals are just bonuses, or are they, conducive? Are they like factors that determine our happiness, right? Um, and like I was saying, right, a lot of the content of this talk is actually mixing the science and the scripture of happiness. So the agenda for today really is one, I want to baseline how happy are you guys, right? And that's where the survey comes in. So and secondly, I want to then actually go deep into the science of happiness and kind of help you guys understand why what you think makes you happy actually might not make you happy, right? And how our mind, our brain scientifically perceives happiness, as well as then the practicals of actually how can we pursue happiness then, right? And how God created us in light of this, and how we can kind of overcome our wiring, the way that we were built, the way our brains work to actually be happy, right? So, like I was saying before, guys, this is the survey link, right? Feel free to survey link one more time, but maybe if all the people that already did take the survey, can you guys open Menti and actually put your survey results there? So let me present this as well, right? Feel free to put your survey results inside the Menti. But in the meanwhile, I just want to kind of maybe give a brief of what the survey is, right? It's actually called the PERMA Profiler. I literally just copied the survey link from the Yale website. So yeah, thanks. But but essentially it covers 5 main pillars of happiness, of actually not really happiness, more about well-being, right? Which talks about how positive we are, how much of our day-to-day do we have positive emotions, how engaged do we feel with life, with work, with all these kinds of things, maybe about our relationships, how fulfilled we feel from our relationships, about meaning as well as accomplishment. And it also covers 3 other negative um, feelings as well, right? Which, oh, sorry, Menti code is 472093. 7394. There you go. Right, there you go. 47207394. So yeah, it covers 3 negative emotions as well, right? Your health, And if you have a bad health, maybe that can also consider to, your unhappiness, maybe your loneliness and some of the negative emotions you might be feeling, like anxiety, like worries, and all those kinds of things. So I want to give maybe people a little bit more time as well to take the survey. If you also go to the Menti, you can also click the survey here as well and just put in your results into the survey, so it can kind of gauge where most people are at now. If you have decimals, just round up, round down, doesn't really make a difference. It's just for getting a gauge of where people are, right? So feel free to round up, round down, put where you guys are, right? But yeah, we can round up if you're happy, round down if you're unhappy. But interesting. Wow. There are some people, a lot of people, at least amongst 13 people, there's a high amount of people who are feeling lonely. Actually, very interesting, right? Quite a number of people are feeling lonely, right? Um, Quite a number of people are also feeling a lot of negative emotions, right? More than on a 50% basis, they're actually feeling negative emotions. I think a lot of us here feel happy with their relationships, right? 7, 8 out of 10, right? A lot of us find meaning in their life. Maybe some people don't, right? Engagement. Well, I find this interesting because no one's a 10 and no one, barely anyone's like a 9 and below. Everyone's kind of like in the 7, 8 range for engagement, right? Everyone kind of feels engaged, but kind of not really. Positive emotions, I think it's more of a curve. You still see some people with very little positive emotion, right? I guess I'm sorry for whoever is feeling that way. But yeah, it looks like there's a big range of this, right? Negative, you can see the biggest range. Some people not feeling any negative emotion, some people feeling a lot, right? Loneliness, you have a lot of people in the top and a lot of people in the very bottom as well. Um, I didn't really ask for the overall happiness. Oh, accomplishment actually. Looks like everyone's a solid 7 here on accomplishment. No one feels overly accomplished. No one really feels like 0 either. It's very interesting. So roughly, if we can see around, everyone's like around like the 6 or 7 on the PERMA, and on the negative, they're also feeling a little bit on the negative side, um, which is actually very interesting, right? Um, Feel free to keep taking the survey if you want, but I'm gonna move on here as well. Um, in terms of the one thing that would make you happy right now, right? I also asked you guys this question. I think if I look at this, right, a lot of us, put, things like food, right? Success, right? Health, right? Traveling, finances, love, right? There's a lot of these things that, a lot of us think would make us happy, right? If we're having good health or success, or we're having food, or good family, good relationships, sometimes we think that those things will make us happy, right? And actually today, what we want to do to this talk is actually to understand, will those things actually make us happy? Lots of different things. Man, there's so many crypto people in this group. Ethereum, crypto. But okay, I guess moving back to this, right? Right. That's probably better for everyone. Yeah. So moving back to this, right, guys? Let's get straight to the science, right? And actually some really cool research covering why some of the things that you said actually might not make you so happy, right? And how our mind actually scientifically perceives as happiness. So maybe I'll ask a question in this room here, right? How many of us have said a statement like this before, right? If only I blank, if only, I was promoted, if I had a relationship, boyfriend or girlfriend, if I won this project, if I bought this bag or car, or I got this new thing, or if I went on this vacation or I went to that country, I would just be so happy, right? How many of us have said something like this before, right? As if like, our happiness is kind of dependent on the success of this, right? If I looked at, previous, it said, I would be happy if was successful, right? If I was happy, if I had love, or, all those kinds of things, right? And maybe my question for you guys, right, is I want to go over 4 things in a little bit of research and get your guys' opinion. Do nice things make us happy, right? Does love or relationships or marriage, does that make us happy? Or what about losing weight? I know a lot of us put wealth and health, right? Does losing weight maybe make us happy? Or what about making money, right? Does making money and being successful make us happy, right? And I'll go through a lot of this research, right? So maybe a question, right? Do nice things make us happy? What do you guys think? Yes? Do nice things make us happy? Just write in the chat if you think yes or no. Nice things like going on, vacation, going, having nice things, right? It looks like grand majority, all of y'all saying yes, right? Some people are saying temporarily. Interesting, right? So time to be a nerd, right? And pretty much looked into some research papers, right? And there's this survey done actually in 1976, right, by Nickerson and his team. And it pretty much surveyed 12,000 freshmen in college, right? And then 20 years later, they came back and kind of asked about, their life satisfaction. So like in 1976, they asked about their materialistic attitudes, especially when they were in college. And, coming back to those same people who labeled themselves either materialist or non-material, or like, not really materialistic, and kind of gauge their life satisfaction 20 years later. And, what they found, right, was, unsurprisingly, people who were materialists actually had lower life satisfaction versus non-materialists. And materialists also had more mental health disorders. So what does that mean? I mean, maybe it can make you happy in the short term, but in the long term, the seeking of nice things actually makes us less happy in the long term. When we want a lot of nice things, we tend to then be less happy. I don't think the nice things itself make us happy or make us unhappy or something, but it's the fact that when we seek it and we want it and we crave and want these nice things, that's actually what makes us unhappy. So maybe, probably, but most likely not, right? Okay, what about love and marriage? What do you guys think? Does being in a relationship make you happy? What do you guys think in the chat? Yes. On average, yes, right? When you're in a relationship, sometimes it depends, right? A lot of us, again, saying yes, right? So again, nerd looked at a different survey. Their life satisfaction pretty much every year for marriage and after marriage, right? And what is actually really interesting, right, guys, is, this chart pretty much talks the year of marriage, right, at t equals 0, and there's a -4 and then a +4, right? And what they pretty much find is that for most people, that for example of German women, right, I don't know if it's the same for Indonesian women and men, but life satisfaction peaks at about year 0 of marriage, right? And it actually starts going up, the years before marriage, because probably like, oh, you're dating, you're proposing, all that kind of stuff. You're kind of getting more into it and wanting, probably getting happier, right? Post marriage, though, it starts to immediately kind of drop after year 0, right? And what they pretty much find is that your life, your happiness in marriage kind of baselines ±2 from your marriage, right? So do love and marriage kind of make you happy? Yes, it does, for the ±2 years, like leading up to getting married, and then you get married, that stuff. But after 2 years, it kind of goes back to baseline, right? And that's why they always say, right, love is a choice, you know, marriage is a choice, right? Because your happiness, your life satisfaction, your feel good emotions, they disappear over 2 years, or according to the study. I don't know. I've just reached my 2-year mark, so I hope my marriage doesn't go feel worse. But according to this, after 2 years, it baseline. So I'm hoping mine stays happy. But yeah, so love, you know, is a choice, right? It makes you happy leading up and before and after, but after that, it's a baseline, right? What about losing weight? I think this is my favorite survey, my favorite research. So obviously, as you guys know, I'm on the chubbier side, right? On the 3-digit club, right? But essentially, this survey, not really survey, more tracked 2,000 individuals, right? Obese individuals, and who just entered a diet program, right? So, and obviously after a diet program, there's only 3 things that happen. Either you lose weight, you gain weight, or you stay the same weight, right? There's only 3 options here: up, down, stable, right? And what people have found, what the survey found is that, you know, it tracked the percentage of people with depressed moods, right? So I'll repeat that again. It tracked the percentage of people with depressed moods, and the black is the baseline, which is before the diet program and after the diet program. And I think, you know, people, it should be pretty obvious what the conclusion here, guys. Everyone who entered the diet program was more depressed. But aside from that story, right? What they see, right, is actually the people who lost the most weight, or who had the highest weight loss, showed the highest percentage of depressed moods, right? Which is kind of counterintuitive, right? If you enter a diet program and you lose weight, I would expect to see that maybe you'd be less depressed because you would feel better, right? But for these people, the ones who lost weight actually were less happy, right? We're definitely less happy. And so then again, the question, right? Does losing weight make us happy? Well, I mean, according to this research, probably not, right? Like, I think each bucket showed higher proportions of depressed moods. And again, those who lost most weight had the most increase in depression. So interesting, right? And what about money, guys? What do you guys think about this one, right? Does making money make us happy? I'm sure a lot of us would think yes, right? Um, but, you know, again, super nerd here, right? But they surveyed 450,000 US residents between 2008 and 2009 about subjective well-being, right? And oops, and pretty much, okay, this is another nerd chart, right? But essentially there are 3 attitudes. Either you're feeling positive, you report feeling happiness, smiling, and enjoyment, or you feel not blue, where the definition of blue is reporting worry or sadness. So that means you didn't report worry or sadness. And or stress free, you didn't report stress for the previous day. And if you look at the chart, all of them kind of flatline after a certain amount, right? So pretty much after the 75,000 mark, any amount of income you make no longer affects that person's happiness. After a certain amount, it no longer affected your happiness. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't make you less stressed, right? And it doesn't make you not worry or sad. But what it does do is until you reach that amount, right, you start to feel stressful. You start to feel a lot of these emotions. And money does impact how you can feel happy, right? And essentially the conclusion, right, is that money does make us happier, right? But only until a certain level, right? After that, money can no longer buy happiness because you don't need much. And I think another research that was really interesting is by Van Praag and Fischers, which pretty much says that for every $1 increase in your actual income, your required income increases as well by $1.40. So every time you're making more money, you also want more money, or you feel like you need more money. So that's why money is so dangerous, because it's never ending. Once you make more, you want more again, right? Like, and what I find funny is that it's not one to one. It's like it increases even more um, than how much you make, and that's why this money can never truly make us happy. It can't buy happiness after a certain point. So I know that was a lot of research, but now let's kind of go back to the Bible, right? And in the Bible, we see a classic example, King Solomon. And this guy, he had pretty much everything going for him, right? He was wise. He was the wisest person in the world. He was rich. He had more money and richness and gold and silver than all other kings combined. In fact, in Kings, it also talks about how pretty much silver and gold were just so common during his time, right? He had love. Well, I don't know if this is considered love, but he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, right? Um, Pretty much 1,000 partners, right? And he also had peace all his life. Right? As a king, he pretty much had peace all his life. No wars throughout his entire time of him being king, right? So he had all of this, right? But then in Ecclesiastes, he then says he hates life, right? He says he hates life, that all his work that he's done, all the things that he's done is meaningless, right? It's a chasing after the wind. And all the things he toiled for didn't really make sense for him anymore. He didn't enjoy it. So how is it possible that for someone to be so rich, so wise, he's super smart, super rich, super successful, people come to him for everything, but him being so unhappy with everything in his life, right? And let's go back again into science, right? Why does our mind perceive happiness, and why does it, why do we look at things like nice things, love, health, and money, and think we want those and think those things make us happy, but then it doesn't, right? So I'm sorry again, I'm going back into a lot of research, right? But this is another thing. It's called the 4 annoying features of our brain, right? 4 annoying features of our brain. And pretty much it talks about how our mind's intuitions are often wrong, right? So we tend to want the wrong things, right? Secondly, our minds do not think in absolutes. So we always think in reference points to things. Thirdly, our minds get used to things. And I think the worst annoying feature of our brain is we don't realize that we'll get used to things, right? So I'll explain a little bit of each one, right? So going back to intuition, right? We are often miswanting. I think the research of this pretty much says that we often it's being mistaken about what we want and actually how much we will like something in the future. And I think we see that a lot, right? Because you see product placement, ads, marketing, songs, social media, TikTok, they show us a dream. They show us things that we want. But actually, I don't know if we really even want it, but we're just tricked to kind of wanting it, right? And then our minds also thinks the absolute in reference points, right? If you look at optical illusions, right, you see this circle and this circle is actually the same size, but you're like, what? No, this one looks way bigger than this one, right? But I think it's because our mind just always thinks in reference points, and even in terms of happiness, we think in reference points. So if we look at super, hot models, then we'll end up having lower ratings of our own and our own partner's appearance, right? If we live next door to a lottery winner, we're more likely to buy a car because we see them being rich and spending more money. Or if everyone around you is unemployed, or they're having lower test scores or everything, you're okay with lower test scores as well. I don't know about how many of you guys felt that in school, right? Is if the whole class failed their test and you failed your test, you didn't feel as bad. Than if you were the only one who failed your class, who failed the test, right? And thirdly is another thing called hedonic adaptation, where it's pretty much the process of becoming accustomed to something, similar to kind of like how our eyes adjust to the dark, right? And I think it's a real big thing because, for example, if you ride business class for the first time, you're gonna be like, wow, this is amazing, right? But if you always ride business class every time you go on the plane, then you may not expect, it doesn't bring you the same level of joy, right? The first time is always bringing you much more joy, but then after a while, you kind of get used to it, right? The same stimulus doesn't make you feel as happy as before, right? The first bite of food is always better than the 10th bite, right? And I think the last thing that always annoys people is impact bias, right? The definition is actually the tendency to overestimate the emotional impact of a future event, both in terms of intensity and duration. So we often think it will be better and or worse than it will be, and we think it will feel it longer than we should, right? For example, in a breakup, we will think we will be sad or lonely forever. Or if we buy this bag, we'll be happy forever or for a super long time. For as long as I have this bag, I'll be happy. Or if I go on this, vacation, I'll be so happy for a very, very long time, right? But I think it's like the old joke with boats. The two best days of owning a boat is the day you buy it and the day you sell it, right? Because everything in between is just not as happy, right? So I know that was a lot of research, right? But I think just to summarize all the final research is actually that our happiness is controlled only by three factors. Believe it or not, our happiness is only controlled by three things. The innate, which is our genes, our nature, our inherent temperament, right? The second is the intentional, about pretty much how we choose to respond and our general attitude to things. And the third is actually about, what happened. So maybe a question for the audience, right? How much percent do you think of our happiness is actually the third one because of what happened in our life? Maybe I want to ask the question to the audience, right? How much percent of our happiness is because of what happened versus because of, maybe who we are innately or because of how we choose to respond? Right, so Jeff says 15, Eduardo 20%. What do you guys think? How much is each, right? If you have to take each of these, how much do you think it would be? Right? Jenna says 30%, Calvin 10%, right? Intentional, Gio says is 50, right? How we choose to respond is 50% of our happiness. Calvin, choosing positivity, 90%, there you go, right? But actually, those are real big things, right? Because, believe it or not, right? Who we are, our attitude, our innate part, our temperament actually considers 50% of our happiness. 40% is how we choose to respond, right? Choosing positivity, all those things, those are 40% of our happiness. And actually only 10% of how we feel and our happiness is actually based on what happened, right? And I think the key point here is that what happens to you actually doesn't affect you that much. It plays a part, but it's actually how you choose to respond and how we're wired, right? So I think with that was a lot of research. I kind of want to pass the floor over to Ellis, who is a sister from the Bekasi Church, right? And she'll be sharing about her experience with happiness and how, how all the things that happened to her in her life, doesn't actually affect her true joy. So Ellis, feel free to come on the stage.
Okay, thank you, bro. Oke, selamat malam, brother sister semuanya. Perkenalkan, nama saya Erin Elis Astrika Pandiangan atau biasa dipanggil Elis dari Single Ministry Bekasi. Di sini saya akan sharing sedikit tentang kisah hidup saya di masa pandemi ini. Di awal pandemi pertengahan Maret 2020 banyak membuat orang khawatir. Saya yang awalnya cuek, percaya ada pandemi, namun berlaku biasa saja karena merasa sehat dan nggak akan terjadi apa-apa kepada saya dan juga keluarga. Namun di bulan April 2020, peningkatan COVID-19 sangat tinggi di Jakarta. Adalah awal kekhawatiran saya dan rasa takut saya dimulai. Tanteku yang biasa aku panggil Bow, yang adalah pahlawan iman saya, Ernita Pandiangan, sister dari utara, sakit dan meninggal tepat di tanggal 9 Mei 2020. Karena pandemi, jadi harus dimakamkan secara COVID. Kepergian Bow membuat saya dan juga keluarga besar dari Bapak sangatlah terpukul. Ketidakterimaan keadaan membuat keluarga saling menyalahkan satu sama lain. Terutama Bapak selaku anak paling tua dan dia sangat mengasihi Bow. karena Bow adalah adik yang paling bisa diajak berdiskusi tentang keluarga walau dia belum menikah. Jujur saat itu terjadi, saya bertanya kepada Tuhan, kenapa Tuhan ambil Bowku begitu cepat. Sempat nggak terima, dan belum lagi dengar cerita dari Bow-bowku yang lainnya untuk saling menyalahkan satu sama lain. Bow adalah contohan bagi saya untuk bisa jadi impact di keluarga. Dan saya bersyukur bisa dimenangkan oleh Bow sebelum dia menyelesaikan perjuangannya di dunia ini. Namun kehilangan Bow membuat saya banyak belajar menjadi pribadi yang selfless, belajar rendah hati untuk menanyakan kabar duluan di dalam keluarga, aktif di ministry, fellowship dengan brother sister dan juga Nusantara. Dan juga sit-in study. Yang awalnya saya lakukan itu hanya untuk melampiaskan rasa kehilangan saya dan kesedihan saya. Tanpa saya sadari itu adalah cara Tuhan membuat saya lebih semangat di dalam menjalani hidup dan juga berministry. Belum genap setahun kepergian Bow, April 2021 kami harus kehilangan keluarga lagi yang aku panggil Inang Muda. Istri dari adiknya Bapak meninggalkan 3 orang anak yang masih sangat kecil-kecil. Di situ saya merasa kekhawatiran saya lebih besar. Kekhawatiran bagaimana nasib dengan adik sepupuku, tumbuh tanpa seorang mama, dan juga khawatir bagaimana reaksi keluargaku menghadapi ini semua. Hal yang paling saya takuti adalah jangan sampai keluargaku kepahitan kepada Tuhan dan hilang harapan sama Tuhan. Tapi Tuhan baik, itu semua tidak terjadi seperti yang aku takuti. Melalui kedukaan, kami keluarga kembali hangat, saling care satu sama lain, dan bekerja sama untuk memastikan dan saling membantu dalam kebutuhan adik-adik sepupuku. Tidak hanya itu, di bulan Juni 2021, di saat COVID varian Delta meningkat, saya terpapar COVID, di mana mama saya sedang pulang kampung dan saya selaku anak paling besar yang seharusnya bertugas memastikan mengurus rumah namun harus isoman. Tidak bisa mengurus adik saya dan juga bapak. Jujur saat itu sedih, kasihan sama bapak yang harus bekerja ekstra untuk mengurus saya yang sedang isoman dan juga adik saya. Setelah saya negatif, bapak saya pun terpapar. Ketakutanku mengetahui Bapak terpapar, membuat aku panik, di mana Bapak ada penyakit diabetes yang membuat aku worry dengan kondisinya. Obat-obatan juga yang sulit saya dapatkan pada saat Bapak positif, belum lagi kasus meninggal meningkat. Semakin membuat aku khawatir dan down. Tapi puji Tuhan kami bisa kembali sehat dan sampai sekarang kami dijauhkan dari COVID yang varian Omicron ini. Begitu banyak keluarga saya alami di masa pandemi ini, kehilangan orang yang sangat kami sayangi, bahkan juga kesehatan sangat diuji, membuat saya sadar Tuhan beri itu semua kepada keluargaku agar saya bisa melihat yang terjadi kepada saya ini dari segi sudut pandangnya Tuhan. Ketika banyak keluarga tidak bisa menerima kenyataan dan saling menyalahkan, aku belajar untuk menjadi pendengar yang baik, belajar di balik dari kehilangan, Tuhan beri kehangatan kepada keluargaku untuk bisa lebih mengasihi, saling care, dan bekerja sama untuk saling memastikan satu sama lain. Banyak sukacita keluargaku terima walau awalnya kami harus kehilangan. Dan sangat bersyukur punya brother sister yang selalu kasih support memastikan hatiku untuk aku tetap bisa memandang kepada Tuhan. Banyak sister yang saling bergantian untuk doain aku dan juga keluarga. Saya sadar itu semua aku terima bukan karena kehebatanku, tapi Tuhan mengasihi dan juga keluargaku. Tuhan proses saya dengan apa yang saya alami melalui struggle, saya bisa belajar untuk lebih mengandalkan Tuhan dan percaya bahwa setiap rancangan Tuhan adalah yang terbaik. Walau saya hanya bisa melihat apa yang terjadi saat ini, dan saya percaya itu tidak ada kebetulan. Dan saya mau lihat cara Tuhan bekerja hebat lagi di dalam kehidupan saya. Supaya saya semakin menjadi impact di dalam keluarga, ministry, pekerjaan, pertemanan, bahkan dimanapun saya berada, dan supaya Tuhan lebih dimuliakan. Sekian sharing saya, terima kasih.
Thank you banget ya Alice for sharingnya. But I think just to show, right, guys, with everything that happened, losing family, with loss and hardship, okay, it doesn't affect her joy or true happiness with God, right? So I kind of want to ask another person to share, Justin, to share maybe about his life as well, about how maybe in times of good and everything, despite everything going for him, it can still make him, maybe not as happy. So Justin, feel free.
Thank you, Marshall. Hello, everyone. It's an honor and privilege, for me to share here tonight. First off, maybe I would just like to tell you about myself. In the picture is my wife, Vicky. She's also here, but in a different location. So we've been married for 8 years now, and we have 2 kids, 2 boys, Jed and Josh, 6.5 and 4. And we've been a disciple since 2014, which is 2 weeks before we got married. And a little bit of myself as well. I am the only child in my family, and I was raised in a Christian family as well. So since little, I've been going to church, Sunday schools, and Bible stories. And my mom is very active in the church as well. So she has her own ministry, ladies ministry, and service to other people, like elderly people and stuff. So I've been always in the Christian value, in the Christian life value. But when I was growing up, as I'm the only child, I have never been really rejected by my parents. And my dad has always been, he never said no to me, right? So he always gives me a yes and never a no. So that created a schema in my life, right? I have a big, ego, big entitlement, and I always I have a very big pride. So I always look down on things, look down on people, and look down on basically everything, because I was always given everything by my dad. And on the opposite side, my mom was always the one who is the strict one, who always gives me punishment, and who always mama, Asian moms, right? They're very fierce. Yeah, they give us strict rules and stuff. So it's totally the opposite. So it created a big confusion in my life as I was growing up, and a lot of negative things that happens in my head every day, which created unhappiness in my life, right? And as I was growing up, I thought I was fine, and I thought I was okay, because I was never in kekurangan, nggak pernah kekurangan, and never in a unhappy state of financial being. And when I was sent abroad to study, I faced the real world, right? Where I was alone without my parents, and I always asked something from my dad. He always provided to me. So, and as I was in high school, and as I was growing up in Singapore, I faced many negative stuff in my life, right? Like partying, drugs, bad crowd, which I thought it was pretty cool, right? At that age, I started doing drugs, smoking when I was 13, started gambling, and doing all the crazy stuff when I was 13. So for me, at that age, I was pretty, I thought I was having fun. I was having the best time of my life, right? As years go by, it felt empty, right? It felt like nothing meant nothing, nggak berarti ya. So to cut the story short, and I when I came back here for good, and I started working, and then I started mingling with all my friends, things happen they flew by so quickly, right? Just 10 years, 15 years just flew by so quickly without anything, without any memory of happiness. It's just a big void in my life. And when I met my wife, when we started dating, the first 3 months was happy, right? Like when Marshall said just now, like when you're about to get married, everything's so happy. And then when you get married, after 2 years, it started falling down. But for me, it's the opposite. When I was dating my wife, it was total disaster. It was it was only 3 months of happiness, and then the rest of the 3.5 years was disaster for me. And when people ask me why do I get married, that's the story I'm going to tell you. So when we dated, the first 3 months, as I said, it was very happy, right? And then after the 3 months, we basically fought every day, right? We fought every day, 24/7. And at one point, we broke up 3 times a day. So it's like breakfast. It's like taking pills, right? Morning, afternoon, and night. So it's a roller coaster for me. But, thankfully, when we dated for 1.5 years, towards the 1.5 years of our relationship, Vicky, she started Bible studying, right? And her uncle is also in the church. So they wanted me to also study the Bible. So short story, Vicky started studying the Bible, and we started studying the Bible, and I saw changes in my wife that I never expected. All right. If you know my wife, if some of you know my wife here, she's not an easy person to handle. So and I'm not an easy person to handle as well. So we both have our sinful nature. I'm a prideful person, an emotional person, since I'm the only child. She's also a very prideful woman, right? Big, full of ego. And so we always fight every day. But the thing that made me realize that she changed, and she was patient with me one day, and we decided to continue with our study, and many things that I saw that never would actually happen to me, right? And for me, and sorry, I didn't write a script, so I'm just sharing from what I experienced. So it's here and there, okay? And when we decided that to really put our focus on God, right? I mean, for me, as I was growing up and as I was working, money was always the number one thing for me, right? Because we, as an Asian family, our parents always say, work hard, earn a lot of money, so you'll be happy. You have all the things you can buy in the world, right? That's the mentality that they gave us since we were young. So as I was growing up, all that is the number one priority for me. Money, 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 and success, success, success. And marriage, and and family and everything else, and God comes later in the list, right? Comes maybe God comes in the 6th list of my my to-do list. So yeah, and when we were studying the Bible, everything changes, everything opened up my eyes that the number one priority is actually not money, right? And when throughout my life, when I had that, it did not make me happy at all, right? It actually made me empty, because I've experienced all the things in life, all the the career that I built, and all the money that I built. It meant nothing. And when I met my wife, my wife, when we were dating, money couldn't solve that, right? Money couldn't solve my relationship with Vicky. Couldn't solve to make her understand me, or to make her submit to me, to make her keep quiet, don't yell at me, and don't debate with me. Money cannot do that, right? And it's not something that you can buy. And for me to be happy, I cannot buy with money. That's what I thought. And what's all the money for if we cannot have our happiness, right? So the scripture actually reminded me that the number one priority is not money, right? So when I decided to actually pursue the word of God, and to actually put it in my life, into practice, everything changes, right? Before, I couldn't sleep at night. It's very hard for me to sleep. I always sleep at 2-3 a.m. every night, because of my head cannot stop thinking all the negative stuff, full of worriness, and full of anger, full of bitterness, right, towards my friends, my wife, my parents, everyone, right? And as the word, and as we do the word, and as I did the word, everything started pieces by pieces starting to work out for me, right? And for me, happiness is no longer about money and no longer about career success and no longer about, like having a lot of friends, having a lot of things to buy. But for me is when I feel content when I feel that I can control my anger, I can, help people. I can be like humble, show empathy towards my wife, towards my kids, my parents. I think that's true happiness for me, right? Personally. And I believe that if I do not have God as my platform in my marriage and in my life, I would not be here today, still married to my wife, because people who were with me throughout my journey, in my marriage and in my dating times, know that it's impossible for us to be here today having two boys and to be sharing with you guys here today if it's not God, and if we don't have him as our platform. I think it's hard for me. And I always remember his word, right? And if I can read it to you guys, it's in Jeremiah 29. Let me read it to you guys real quick. Where is it? Yeah, Jeremiah 29:11 till 14, right? For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I banished you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. This verse, it always keeps me back in track, to remember that he has a plan for me, right? Damai sukacita dan penuh harapan, ya, full of hope, right? And I always put this as my anchor, because he never promised us to be rich, or to have a loving wife, or to have a successful career. He promised us a life full of hope and damai sejahtera and good future, right? I think that's the best thing for me that I can ever ask for. Okay, that's all. Thanks, Marsh.
Thanks so much, Justin, for sharing. I really appreciate your sharing, right? And thank you, Ellis, as well. Like, it just shows that, like, truly, whether in hardship, whether in plenty, whether, when you have everything in your life, right? That doesn't make you any more or less happy, right? But true happiness only comes from God, right? True happiness only comes when you have a relationship with God, and your life kind of changes bit by bit from that, right? So I just want to say thank you again, Justin. Thank you again, Ellis. And I really appreciate for sharing your life and your vulnerabilities. So, going back into the pursuit of happiness, right? And the practicals for this, right? I kind of want to just help us to understand, we talked a little bit about the research about happiness, but now I kind of want to go back into the Bible of how God designed us in light of happiness, right? And how, we can kind of overcome this wiring so that we can be happy, and some practical tips for that. So if you guys remember this chart, right, 50% of our happiness is from our innate, right? 40% is from intentional, 10% from the things that happened, right? How we can be happy is actually, the first is we can actually control this 50% by rewiring our life, right? Letting God transform our minds, right? So that we can kind of change this 50% into being happy. Actually, if you look at the research, they actually say 50% is unchangeable, right? But I don't buy that, right? Because I truly believe God can change the 50%. The next 40% we can change by reframing our attitude, reframing our response when things happen. And the last is that we can change what we want. Like, we can't necessarily change what happened, but what we can do is we can change what we want, and those things can really make us happier, right? So going into the rewire, right? I think the first question that I think about, right, is how did God actually create us, right? And sad to say, right, but going back to Genesis, going back to Adam and Eve, right, God actually cursed Adam, right, and all his lions, right? He cursed us, and he said that through painful toil, all the days of your life, you're going to be constantly working hard just to eat and only to die after, right? I mean, it's kind of depressing, but if you think about it, right, that's kind of like our how our life is now, right? A lot of us were just constantly slaving away at work, at everything, just to eat, just to enjoy life. And that's kind of the curse that God had originally put on us. Work hard and keep toiling, painful toil, all the days of our life, right? In Ecclesiastes as well, Solomon kind of says something similar, right? He says that God has laid a burden on mankind, on the entire human race, by setting eternity in our hearts. And essentially, similar to what Justin said, right? You can have everything in your life, right? But you'll always have eternity in your heart. You'll always have this void that can't ever be filled. You'll work hard, you'll keep working, you'll, go through this, go through the relationships, go through life, but still feel empty inside. And, that's just the way that we were created, right? But at the same time, he kind of gave us a way out, right? And Paul, when he was in prison, he was able to kind of come up with a letter about being joyful, and how essentially Paul learned the secret, pretty much the secret to be content whatever the circumstances, right? He knows that whether in need, whether in plenty, whether in any and every situation, whether well fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, he's learned the secret to be content, right? And what is the secret, guys? Well, the secret really is, the Holy Spirit and God, right? Galatians talks about how the fruit of the Spirit is joy and peace as one of the biggest ones. And and I can really say that, right? If you look at Justin's life, if you look at and if you look at Ellis, I don't think they would be happy without the Holy Spirit guiding them. I don't think they would be happy without God reminding them of who they are, and whatever happened to them, they can still be happy, right? Whether they're fighting every day, whether they're facing so much loss, they can be happy and peace because God is in control, right? And how can we do that? Well, I think we can start with 3 steps, right? The first is starting to kind of remove the lies and replace it with the truth, right? We talked a lot about miswanting and wanting the wrong things. Well, part of it is relearning and removing what are those things that maybe the world wants, right? And again, we have to renew our perspective, because when we conform to the world, then we're going to have painful toil all the days of our life, right? We're going to be working hard nonstop because that's how mankind's created. So if you conform to the world, that's your life. You're just going to be unhappy. But if you stop following the world, you start following God, that's when you can truly be renewed and rewired in happiness, right? And then when you can do that, you can repeat these declarations and remind yourself when you're working hard, when you're toiling away, meditate on that truth and from your relationship with God. That's what's important, not the toil, not the painful toil, right? So that was about rewiring. Next, I kind of want to solve the second 40%, right? Which is reframing our attitude. So actually going back to the research, there's actually 4 tips that we can do to reframe your mind, right? Whether good things happen or bad things happen, you can try these things. So the first one is savoring. The second one is negative visualizations. The third is resetting your reference points. And like how Calvin always says, choosing positivity as one of the fourth tip to kind of reframe your mind, right? What savoring is, it's really about taking the time to step outside of an experience and appreciate it, right? You start sharing your successes with others. You talk about it. Because when you keep your success to yourself, it also dies inside. The joy kind of dies away. And I think it's really important to savor, because even in Psalms, right, they talk about how each generation commends God's work and telling stories of the mighty acts, right? And speak of the glorious splendor, because when you speak about it, when you talk about it, these things bring you joy. But when you keep it to yourself, when good things happen, you just like, okay, cool, thanks. And you just kind of stop talking about it. You kind of lose that joy. You kind of lose the happiness, and it doesn't last that long, right? But and second point is about meditation, and which leads to negative visualization, right? one trick that works as well in happiness is imagining what life would be like if it didn't happen, right? What would life be like if I didn't marry Fen, right? What would life be like if I didn't go on that vacation to the UK? How would, all of these things work out? And I think when you think about what life would be in the absence, you start to appreciate what is happening right now or what has already happened. And you start to become more grateful about what's happening to your life, right? A third important one is resetting your reference points. And I think this is really important because, like one of the Noi features, right? Your mind gets used to stuff. So it's actually very important to remember what our life was like before. So using an example of like the business class, right? If you're always taking business class and it doesn't bring you that joy anymore, why don't you take an economy class, long fall flight? And I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy that business class again, right? If we remember what it's like, if you remember all those things, you start to enjoy and re-experience. You'll start to be more grateful of where you are now, right? Similarly, like I think another important one is how the grass isn't always greener on the other side. If you really stop and inspect other people's situation, right, isn't always as happy, right? In like when you look at social media, right, you see all those comparisons on social media. If you look at their life, some of them are not actually just that happy, but that's just how Instagram and everything and how they've chosen to portray their lives, right? And the last one, from what's it called? Calvin, especially, is choosing positivity. And I think this is really important as well because like it says in Philippians 4, right? Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, right? Whatever is pure wisdom, think about those things. So when bad things happen, our mind naturally thinks about the negative things. We think about, oh no, what could happen? What could be true? Oh, here's the scenarios. Here's all my worries. Here's all of my fears and anxieties. But the Bible doesn't say, think about what your fears are. Think about your worries. Think about your anxiety. No, the Bible says, stop. Think about what is true. What are the facts? What's right? What's pure? What's lovely? What's true? And if you can think about those things, it has the power to overcome your fears, your worries, your anxieties, right? When you can choose this positivity, this covers the 40% of what happened. And you can kind of quote unquote control your mood, your joy, and your happiness as well. So that was a big chunk, the 40% as well. And then lastly is re-want, right? Like I said, you can't change what happens, but you can change what you want, right? And what are some 3 ways that you can do that? Well, one is actually investing in experiences. So I'm going to bring a little bit of research again here, right? Actually, in a survey of 127 people, 60% of them reported having more joy from experiential purchases than versus 20% for material, right? And I think this is actually really important because when we do things and experience things, it's actually better. We think, for a lot of us though, we think experiences are gachengli, right? And that, maybe it could be better if we paid for like, something we can keep, right? I think that's a very, Chengli mentality, right? I would rather pay for something I can keep versus something I can't keep, right? But actually, going on vacation is actually more worth it than buying that bag because that vacation, you'll keep those long-term memories, but a bag you'll see and it won't make you happy forever, right? Another thing that really helps as well is actually giving and paying for others, right? Another research has actually says that spending more of your money on others actually predicted a greater happiness than spending on yourself, right? And lastly, right, prioritizing relationships. I think in this survey from 222 freshmen, the upper 10% of people who reported happy, highly correlated with people who were highly social and had stronger romantic and social relationships than the less happy people. So in other words, the happiest people in the freshman group were the ones who had the most friends, who had the most romantic, had a stronger romantic relationships and all these things. Because when you prioritize relationships, these are things that bring you joy. Not about what happened, not about how good your grades were, not about how, all these things. But when you prioritize relationships, these things can actually make you happy, right? So with that, I kind of want to pass it on again one more time to Vicky. This is Justin's wife, right? To actually share about how her journey is and how, you know, prioritizing relationships ended up, you know, making her happier. So Vicky, feel free to share.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin's wife. He told you guys about it already. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and thank you for the opportunity to share. Thank you, Marshall, for sharing. Well, I agree with my husband and with Marshall that money, success, and material things are not number one. I also pursue those things like career, money, party, hang out with friends all the time, and I focus on my fun. Just want to hang out with friends on the same level, and I thought all those things could make me happy. Until I dated Justin and we had unlimited problems and tons of drama. Not because we have a financial issue or have no friends, it's just conflicts because of our character. Then I realized no material things can fix our problems. None of my friends can help too. I truly appreciate my boyfriend, then Justin, willing to do study Bible together with me and dibimbing until we both become disciple. After that, I found my true happiness, not in money, not in my worldly friendship, not that I don't enjoy my friends and my fun, but now I know my priority and my purpose of life. I now can enjoy reaching out, helping others, even strangers. I learned to have sympathy and more compassion. I learned how to consider other people's feelings. God helped me fix relationships with my family and friends that I could care less before. God helped me to focus on relationships, just as Marshall said, and helped me to humble myself down. My true joy is if I can share how God is real and good in my life. And that's all I want to share. Hope it helps.
All right, thanks, Vicky. And yeah, I know, guys, I think it just shows, right, guys, you know, when God changes your life and you can rechange what you want, what your goals are in life, right? Changing it from, you know, all the things for selfish ambition, but actually starting to care about others, starting to prioritize relationships, you will find your life significantly more happy as well. So with that, guys, I'd like to, you know, just, you know, close again. Here's the summary, right? How can we be happy? You rewire yourself, right, guys? You reframe your mind. You know, change the way your attitude, right? Like Calvin always says, choose positivity, right? And lastly, it's, you know, you can't necessarily change what happens in your life, but you can change what you want, right? And you can focus on all the things that can truly make you happy, which is relationships and caring for others and, you know, experiences. So with that, you know, here's a list of all the references, of all the papers, of all the things I have. So if you ever want any of them, let me know. I will share with you the specific links and the research. But other than that, I'd, you know, hopefully with that, we can kind of close and go to a breakout room, right? Where we can pretty much ask you guys 3 questions that I think is really important, right? Is, you know, based on the survey, like, are you really happy, right? Are you really happy with your life? And what are the areas of your life that you kind of feel less happy with? You know, where are the places that you score less? Where are the places that you score high on? Like, what, you know, are you happy or not, right? And the second one is, what do you think is the reason for that unhappiness? Is it the situation or is it the attitude, right? And, you know, maybe the thirdly is like, how can you rewire, reframe, or rewant to kind of turn that area of unhappiness into happiness? So with that, I just want to say thank you guys all for the Gem Talk. And with that, we can kind of go into breakout rooms and what's it called? And after that, we can kind of come back